right, here's a story. Now, is the story true? Is it not true? It certainly could be true. I saw it in a Chabad publication, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago. And I sort of checked out the information, and it definitely could be true. The story goes like this, that there was the American Revolution. In the American Revolution, so anybody who knows a little bit about the American Revolution, which I know a very little bit about it, but I know a little, as the colonial forces, they fought against the British. They had the advantage that they were fighting at home, and the British, their forces were far away. But the British had the advantage is that they had more troops there, and the British were really very motivated to, the sun should not set on the British Empire, what do they call it? And they were conquerors. They conquered. And they were very good warriors. They were very good soldiers, and their army was very organized, and they had, ample cannons and the cannons that were like missiles today. And they had the ammunition, and they were trained, and they had. On the other hand, the colonials, they didn't have as many cannons, if at all. I don't even know if they had. And everybody had to bring from their home their own guns. And they were not as organized and etc. Anyway, so in the beginning of the war, they lost. They lost battle after battle. And things didn't look so good. So they made this sort of a break in a place called Valley Forge. In Valley Forge, they hoped to sort of reorganize and so they tried to hide themselves from the British as much as possible so the British wouldn't come and attack them. So they made this place in Valley Forge. And it happened to be that, and they were camped out in Valley Forge, and it was in the winter also. The winter came. American winters are pretty severe. So one of the soldiers there, and so they didn't have tents for everybody, and they didn't have, one of the soldiers there was a Jew. There were Jews that came right in the beginning, they came from, because the religious oppression, there was religious oppression in England, so they came along, so they were Jews. One of the Jews was a fellow called Solomon. His last name, I guess, was Solomon. And he was an observant Jew. And he realized that it was the first night of Chanuka. So he was like laying outside under like 2 blankets or something, and is trying to, as much as possible. He realized it was Hanukkah. So he sort of rolled over, and he had prepared for this. He had a little Hanukkah menorah, a small Hanukkah menorah, with wicks, enough wicks for the whole holiday. And he had oil, a little bottle of oil, which would last him the whole time. And if he needed it. So sure enough, he needed it. It was nighttime, he realized. So he took it out, and he filled up one of these little, whatever it is, like ridges or something and he filled it up with oil, and he put this little wick in there. And he made the 3 blessings the first night, and he lit it. He's watching this candle burn, and is thinking to himself that who knows, if they go into battle tomorrow, maybe he won't even be alive to see, to light the next night's candles. Suddenly he hears from over his feet, he's laying down there, he hears a sword being drawn, and someone saying, "Put that fire out, you're a traitor. I'll kill you." And he looks up, and who's standing there? General Washington. Now, George Washington, he was the commander-in-chief of the army. the colonial army, whatever they called themselves. And he looked and sees George Washington. So he puts the flame out. He says, no, you're a general. I was not. What are you lighting candles? You're signing. You're making a sign to the enemy where we are. That'll say. He said, no. That's not so. I'm not trying to signal the enemy. I'm a Jew. I'm a religious Jew, and this is a Jewish holiday. And he said, what Jewish holiday is this? It's the holiday of Chanuka. And he said, Washington said, listen, I know the whole Bible. There's no such holiday. You're a liar. He said, you're right. The holiday of Hanukkah, the Bible ends in what's it called? The Chronicles, Book of Chronicles, in the beginning of the Second Temple. And this was in the middle of the Second Temple. It's not in the Bible, but it's a holiday. And he said, what is the holiday? What holiday is it? He still has his sword. He said it's the holiday. The Jews fought against the Greeks. It was in the middle of the Second Temple. The Jews fought against the Greeks, and the Greeks wanted to quash Judaism, and they fought against. And even though they were, all of a sudden, this Solomon, he gets sort of an inspiration, and he said that you should know that the Jews were few, and the Jews were weak, but the Jews fought for the truth, and because they fought for the truth, so they won. And the same thing will be with you, General Washington. Our troops are outnumbered. We're not as outnumbered as the Jews were back then. But because we're weak, we don't have as many arms and cannons as they do, as the English do. But because we're fighting for the truth, it's just like the Maccabees back then fought for the truth and they won, so you will win truth also because you're fighting for the truth. So Washington puts his sword back in and he said, listen, you're a Jew. You're from the nation of prophets. What you just said, I take as a prophecy. You can light the candle, you can light it, but make sure it's covered over, that no one could see it. And that's it. And sure enough, they did go into battle later, and they won. They won, and they won battle after battle until finally the English surrendered. They surrendered, and they declared independence, America, and that's how. Okay, 3-4 years after America declared independence, 2 years, whatever year after they declared independence, maybe it's just 1 year. What was it, 1776? So they declared independence, and meanwhile, this Solomon fellow, he went back home and he opened up a printing house or something like that, and he was pretty successful. One night, he hears a knock on his door. He opens up the door. Who's standing there? Washington, the president of the United States. He was the first president. He's standing with these people standing behind him, honorable people. They're all with tuxedos on. And he said, General Washington. And he said, Solomon, how are you? He says, wait, I didn't know you were coming. The house is not in order. May I come in? He says, yes, but you have to excuse me. Don't worry about it. He comes in and he says, I'd like to introduce to my wife, to my children. This is General Washington. He says, the President Washington. President Washington said, so you remember me? He said, oh, of course I remember you. You were the commander in chief. He said, you remember that night that you spoke to me? He says, of course, I remember that night. Washington said, listen, more than you remember me, I remember you. He said, maybe you've asked yourself, or maybe you didn't ask yourself, why I was walking around in the middle of the night, that night, and why I was walking around. He said, that's a good question, surveying the troops. It's in the middle of the night, you look at the troops. He said, I went because I saw how our troops were lacking in arms and how we were outnumbered 2-3 to 1. And we didn't even have tents enough. And I thought to myself, I'm going to send these boys into battle. They're going to die. And we're not going to be victorious anyway. Just to send, maybe it's better to live on our knees than to live under the ground, huh? Than to die. In any case, we're not going to win the battle. Then I saw you, and you told me the prophecy that just as we're fighting for truth, we will win, just as the Jews won back then. And I took that, and that gave me a new, renewed enthusiasm and positivity. And because of that, I went into the battle. Because of that, we won. And it comes out that therefore, I want to give you this medallion. They say he gave him a medallion in gratitude from President Washington to this fellow. And they said it was in his family for a while until it got lost. The point of the matter is, if the story is true, which it could be true, then it means the whole America was founded on one little light of Chanuka. And just as a little bit of light pushes away a lot of darkness, so also the solution to the world's problems, and there certainly are a lot of problems in the world, is to make a little bit of light, to do good, learn more Torah, give more charity. When you pray to God, understand the words, use your heart in addition to your mouth and your mind when you pray, and be a little more careful in doing the commandments and doing these good things, even though it doesn't seem to be connected directly to what's going on in the world. What's corrected more is, arguing about who's right and who's wrong, and this general should have done that, and they should have done this, and the United Nations, and how bad these guys are, how good these guys are, which that doesn't help at all. But doing commandments does, just like a little bit of light automatically pushes away darkness. Every good deed, word, even thought that we do, think, and say makes a little more light, and suddenly we'll all wake up from this terrible dream that's called exile, and with Mashiach together, defeat all of the darkness. Have a good day with Mashiach. Now, God willing, tomorrow we'll finish the Torah Or. The Torah. We started beautiful Torah Or. Have a good day. Shalom Uvracha. God bless you all.